She is a NBC Sports Bay Area reporter covering the Golden State Warriors. We welcome Zena Keita onto Hoopsology. Welcome, Zena.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on to the show. Really appreciate it. An exciting time for basketball overall, especially the W. We've just been covering just the league, Caitlin Clark, the other rookies. We've just been going on and on. A lot of excitement, but a lot of excitement around your neck of the woods with the San Francisco and Golden State getting a WNBA team. Toronto's going to get one in 2026. You guys are set for 2025. Can you kind of take our audience through just the process of San Francisco getting a WNBA team? I live in Denver, so I know Denver was a contender. Portland was a contender. So can you kind of take us into what made San Francisco kind of win, get in that space with, again, San Francisco and Toronto of getting a WNBA team?
Well, sure. Yeah. So I even remember I used to work for the Golden State Warriors, for those of you that don't know. And I was on the partnerships team, and I was actually the person chosen on our team to represent the partnership efforts for envisioning what it would look like to have a WNBA team owned by the Golden State Warriors organization. And, we went through the entire exercise, like very diligent about ticket revenue, what a venue size would be. Would we want to play in San Francisco? Would we want to play in Oakland? Would we want to play in San Jose? Demographics, who could we go after in terms of audience? I mean, we went through the whole thing. And this was like back in 2021. And it was a great exercise. We presented it to Joe Lacob, and Joe Lacob, the owner of the Golden State Warriors, for those of you also that don't know, he's been a women's basketball lover and supporter. He had a team, the San Jose Lasers, back in the ABL days, the league, that the women's league, that eventually folded and then was revived into the WNBA essentially. But so he already had this seed within him to love and want to support women's basketball, but he had to make it make sense, right? Fiscal sense. And so we did that whole presentation. I left the Warriors, ended up joining the Athletic. So I didn't know where that project landed, where it was, what they were doing behind the scenes. And ultimately, behind the scenes, the Warriors were still working on what that would look like. There was also a separate team that was associated more so with Oakland. And I'm not sure all the details around that team, but I know it was a former player that was leading those efforts. And at the end of the day, there was like basically those two entities kind of vying for the support from the W. And ultimately, the WNBA allowed the Warriors to move forward with their bid for the team, and the rest was history. They started putting things together and set aside the money, and $50 million. $50 million was the price point on that for the Warriors to invest into getting the team, which, interesting coincidence or not, I don't know. Sabrina Merchant from The Athletic pointed this out. The new charter program that the WNBA just released a year ago, Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA, said it would cost $25 million a year to charter teams to go all around the country and play their games. And they just announced a charter program for the next 2 years that may cost $50 million. So you never know. The Warriors may have been doing a lot more work than just getting a WNBA team. They might be actually helping them do some more things. But ultimately, they got the team, started putting things together, put some people from the Warriors organization over onto the Valkyries side, and just recently announced. And man, what a rollout they've had.
So I think the team name you mentioned, the Valkyries, is perfect.
Yep.
What was your thoughts on the team name? Because it can kind of go either way in terms of public reaction, but it seemed like it was an instant hit in terms of the name reveal. What was your kind of feedback that you received in terms of kind of the finalization of the team name?
Yeah, no, at first I was like, oh, that's a mouthful. Valkyries. Valkyries, Valkyries, Valkyries. Like I was like, I'm gonna have to get used to saying that. But one thing I love is something that is well thought out. And of course, I am a Marvel fan. So I was a fan from the perspective of Valkyries, Tessa Thompson.
Yeah.
Uh, I am also Xena. My entire life, I've been the quote Princess Warrior. So I do appreciate that connection between the Valkyries and the Warriors, and thinking of a brother organization and a sister organization. I really love the way that they've told the story as to why the Valkyries name was chosen. One, and it seems like the biggest one, the fans really wanted it. Like there was so much clamoring In the comments of the Warriors as they were announcing these things in WNBA Golden State before they had the name. I mean, there was even fan art already created for the Valkyries, and so I love that they found a way to incorporate what the fans wanted, but then again, that sisterhood to the Warriors, the Valkyries being those figures in mythology, being the angels that kind of carried the Warriors home to um, ultimately after they've fallen. So I appreciate that sisterhood and brotherhood aspect. And then I really, really, really like the design of the logo more than anything. I like Valkyries. I think, at the Valkyries block party that we had this past weekend, kind of announcing the team to the Bay Area, Kaylani came out on stage, Princess of the Bay, singer well known in the area. She said she likes Valks over Vals. So officially, I'm going with Valks until, a game starts. But I love more than anything the logo, the concept that on the logo, the wings of the Valkyries kind of depicted in that V formation, the 13 spokes around the logo being the 13th team in the WNBA, the spokes creating 5 sections on each side being a 5 versus 5 concept of basketball, the bridge being in the middle, which is also reminiscent of the bridge in the Golden State Warriors logo. I mean, there's so many thoughtful elements to the way that they put this together. And more than anything, that's what I love. And then the last but not least, that colorway is pretty as hell. It is like gorgeous. And I cover the full WNBA, so I can't get too crazy on having one team's gear. But man, I do really, really like the gear that they've created for the Valkyries.
Nice. Wanted to ask, you mentioned the solid infrastructure that's in place organizationally there and how well thought out this has all been. What are you seeing? You mentioned the fan excitement and all that. So I think I probably know how you're going to answer this. But in terms of fan support and rolling this team out for that inaugural season, how do you see that going? And how do you see, San Francisco and the Bay Area being set up to support this franchise?
Oh, yes. I mean, the fan support's already there. This past weekend, they announced that they've already had over 10,000 season ticket deposits. That
Wow.
building holds about 18,000. So think about it. There's a whole WNBA season that hasn't happened yet. And we're in May of 2024. Next season is until May 2025. That's a full year that they probably could fill up that arena. You mean, it wouldn't be a crazy thing to say, but it'd be exciting if they could. But the fact that they've already gotten that level of response from the community and there's not one player signed to the team shows you just how much the Bay is excited about women's basketball. There's already a history of here in the Bay of being excited about women's basketball, the support that the Cal women's team gets, the support, of course, that Stanford women's basketball gets. There's a lot of love in the space already. So they've already showcased, the fans have already showcased how much they want to support this team. But I think also the Bay Area's history of women's basketball, not to mention there was a WNBA team in the North Bay, right? The Sacramento Monarchs, which eventually became the Washington Mystics, were here too. And they won a championship. They were big time, right? And you think about the history that's part of that. Tisha Pinachero, like being one of the best point guards in the history of women's basketball, being a part of that history as well. It's just like it's already rooted, right? So I think the fan support's there. It's going to be beautiful in the rollout. Organizationally, I think that's the part that everyone's probably, I don't want to say underestimating, but it's probably the thing that's like not being thought of enough. When you think about all of these other organizations that have been doing women's basketball well in the W, Joe Tsai and his connection to from the Brooklyn Nets to the New York Liberty and everything he's done for the New York Liberty in terms of their facilities, even trying to get them travel and being fined to let them charter a plane. Then you look to the Las Vegas team, Las Vegas Aces, Mark Davis, what he's done for the Vegas Aces facilities, alongside the Oakland now the not Oakland Raiders anymore, Las Vegas Raiders, and now his Las Vegas Aces. You look what Matt Ishbia is doing in Phoenix with the Mercury alongside the Suns. All of these teams are doing great, but none of these teams have the same pedigree of winning, right? That
Mm-hmm.
the Warriors have alongside this new Valkyries team and have the same leadership in place that directly cultivated that winning pedigree, right? Joe Lacob came to the Warriors and said, I am going to get us a championship in the next 5 years. And he did that. He did that. That's crazy. And then he's repeating the same thing. He repeated it in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz Warriors, the G League team did it. And now he's got the opportunity to do it with the Valkyries. And so not only do you have people with buku bucks investing, but you also have a basketball pedigree that's alongside these front offices. You've got Steve Kerr and his entire organization that's going to be mentoring and helping and offering advice to Ohemanianen, the GM of the Valkyries. Ohemanianen, I mean, she could take all the advice she wants. She's amazing as a GM. She helped bring together the New York Liberty last year, that super team that went to the finals. So there's just a very, very thick, like rich pedigree of championship caliber basketball behind this organization that's also going to help it be rolled out beautifully.
So I want to ask you. I think the expansion is very exciting, and seeing that synergy between, the NBA and WNBA is it's pretty awesome to see. What are your overall impressions from a business aspect of the W moving forward with expansion and then the upcoming TV rights deal? What are kind of your impressions in terms of where the league goes? I mean, we heard recently about the Las Vegas Aces, them receiving $100,000 in terms of each player getting that money, and then the league's investigating it. This seems pretty a waste of time. This is something really positive for the team and for the league itself, but yet the league wants to investigate. And you mentioned in terms of the league finding teams for having their organizations charter flights for their players. I mean, ultimately, I just think with this new TV deal, I think the league is set for a paradigm shift. And I just want to get your opinion just in terms of you cover this very, very closely. Do you share the same kind of optimism in terms of the league progressing to the next level?
Oh, absolutely. And the biggest thing that is going to help any sort of league progress is money,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's just be straight up capitalists here. Money is going to be the thing that's going to shift them forward, and money is the thing that's coming. And it's definitely coming in the shape of the media rights deal, as you mentioned. Their media rights deal right now, $60 million, and what they're anticipating it to be in the next media rights deal, closer to $100 million. So you have an influx of $40 million cash, all the different things you could do from a league perspective in terms of salary, in terms of charters and travel, in terms of benefits to the league. I mean, the last CBA that the WNBA did was groundbreaking. And, I definitely encourage everyone. There's a great documentary that was created. I'm blanking on the name right now, but they go through what went through trying to create the last CBA with Nneka Ogwumike, Breonna Stewart, and Jonquel Jones, and their experiences with that, getting more rights for mothers, getting more money in general, and raising the salary cap. There were so many elements of the last CBA that were great, but it wasn't enough. And so in this next CBA that's going to come up in 2025, there's going to be more movement to happen, and the women are going to have a lot more room and foundation to stand on because, one, they don't need the league as much when it comes from a fiscal perspective because they're getting money from sponsors, right? Before, when you think about what these women's basketball players had to do, having to play in the WNBA and then having to go overseas in order to find their revenue to take care of themselves and their families throughout the course of the year. Now you're seeing some people having the opportunity to actually stay home because they're getting opportunities from brands that are wanting to invest and support them. People like the City of Las Vegas Tourism Board that wants to just put money in their pocket just so that they can, live and be okay. And then in exchange for a couple of appearances, the league as an organization, the WNBA organization, is going to have some deep questioning within itself of, what do we hold valuable when it comes to wanting to take care of our players and also wanting to, enforce rules? At what point do the rules matter more than the growth of the league? At what point do the rules matter more than the comfort of the players within your league that are going to push it to the best level it's ever been at? And that's the paradigm shift where the WNBA is going to have to reckon with the stringent rules that it's put on itself, on its players, in the sake of competition for the looking at the growth of the game. It's what the NCAA went through, right? It's so funny to watch the NCAA commercials during the March Madness, and you're seeing these commercials about like, we're working on all these different things for our student athletes, and we're making sure that NIL happens, we're making sure that all these things happen. It's like, I know the person that made that commercial from the NCAA is like, oh, I can't believe we have to say this. We didn't want NIL. We didn't want we wanted to control that. And now we don't have control over that, but we need to buy in. We've got to figure out how to be a part of this because we can't help but to accept it because it's going to be the growth of our league. And I feel like the WNBA is about to have the same thing happen. The influx of cash from this media rights deal, the influx of cash from these brand rights deal, the growth of the celebrity of the players that are within the league, all of these things are going to force the W to have to reckon with itself to see, okay, what matters more when it comes to the growth of our league.
What do you see, Zena, as far as like forecasting expansion in the league? I mean, we just discussed the Bay Area, talked a little bit about Toronto next year, or I'm sorry, 2026. It feels to me like with all this popularity and attention on the NCAA game and more stars coming into the league, not that there weren't stars there to begin with, but it feels like if it's starting to catch fire, if we're waiting 4 or 5 years down the road to get more franchises in, is there potential that that's a missed opportunity? Do you see expansion, going quickly beyond what we're seeing with like the Bay Area and Toronto? Because I think ultimately, when we're talking about capitalism, increasing revenue, and all that, you have to get to more and more markets, right?
Absolutely. I think you put it perfectly. It would be a missed opportunity. You're seeing people that want to see their favorite players from the college game transition to the WNBA and then realize they didn't make the team.
Yeah,
They
right.
didn't make it to training camp. Like, what are you talking about? Like that, there's a lot of new fans that want to be a part of this ecosystem that are like, well, I don't want to watch anymore, or I don't care anymore because my person didn't quite make it. We didn't see this as much with this class as much as we saw it with the class before. When you're looking at, for example, the South Carolina class that graduated 4 players, and of the 4 players, only 2 made it into the WNBA, and only one was really starting and playing. And the South Carolina fans were like, "What?" Or new ones at least were like, "What is going on?" So as the league continues to parry these kids, and I call them kids because I'm old enough to do so, but these young women are growing up and they're training from middle school. They're getting trainers in middle school. They're unbelievably more talented at a younger age, I think, than many of us were, than the average of us was. And because of that, you're seeing a lot more talented players so much earlier in their career. The number one person that comes to mind is Juju Watkins out of USC. And everyone, I mean, she could be the type of player that could change the rules about needing to be a senior before you enter, or changing the rule where you could go be one and done like you could in the NBA. Just pro ready type of players. Now, in terms of expansion, the biggest thing, there's been several studies, not studies, I guess, surveys, several surveys of the players of what's more important right now. Like, what's the biggest thing that needs to change right now? And some of the options have been the travel issue, right? Commercial versus charter. Some of the options have been salary. Some of the options have been expansion. Without a doubt, expansion, expansion, expansion. Always more roster spots or more teams. A lot of them go with the more roster spots first before they say more teams. But with the question of more teams, it's coming. And you know why it's coming? Because visibility is big. And we talk about capitalism. People are starting to pay attention to be like, oh, women's sports makes money. People actually support it. People want to be a part of it. And you're seeing these billionaires go and invest in this space, and they want to be a part of this conversation. So Toronto hasn't been confirmed by the WNBA, by the way.
Oh
It's been
wow.
only confirmed. I, I'm forgetting the outlet in Canada, but basically strongly suggested by some sources that it's absolutely happening. But the WNBA, Kathy Engelbert, has already said 2 teams are coming in 2026. So Toronto's definitely probably one of them. Thinking Portland, we've heard Portland is the other one. They were supposed to come out at the same time as the Valkyries, but then something happened and the concept folded for the time being. But more and more teams are going to come out because a lot more people in positions of power with the capital to invest are going to see this as a smart investment, as they should have years ago.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I'm glad I don't know if you share this opinion, Zena. The television coverage I think is finally matching the enthusiasm around the league itself, especially ESPN. I've been hard on them in terms of their coverage of the W over the years, but I say particularly ever since this season has kicked off, I've been very impressed. I haven't really checked out Ion, or I don't think it's ever been on CBS yet. But at least with
No.
the ESPN front, I've been very impressed with their coverage so far. I want to ask you about the early parts of the WNBA season before we talk some Warriors. What have
Sure.
been your early impressions so far of this season? Not only of Caitlin Clark, but Angel Reese. I believe even the power teams of the Aces and the Liberty have looked really good. The Sun have looked really impressive as well. What has stood out to you? Have there been any surprises to you? And what are you expecting as we head towards the Commissioner's Cup?
For the teams that were expected to do well, that is the Aces number one, the Liberty number two, Connecticut Sun number three. They've been doing what they're supposed to be doing. They've been challenged, which is fun, and that's what's so great about the W is that there is more parity across the board, and so it's not going to just be blowouts all the time. But we've also seen some blowouts, and they've come at the hands of those 3 teams. So that's not been surprising at all. Those women have been playing top tier shape, and you're also seeing very clearly who's been playing together well for a while. Connecticut being one of those teams for sure. Obviously, the Aces being 2-time champions, they've played together a long time. They know each other pretty well. And they're playing right now, even without their point guard, Chelsea Gray. And they still obviously look like a team that's won some championships together. And then the New York Liberty super team last year were working their way to melding and getting to know each other by the time of the end of the year, found a way to get to the finals. They're picking up where they left off and doing well as well. No surprises there. One of the things that's exciting and a little bit of a surprise is some of the teams that are melding well together early. So you look at the Phoenix Mercury. Phoenix Mercury had core, solid core players. Of course, everyone knows Diana Taurasi, 42 years old this season, one of the most prolific shooters and scorers in the game. Alongside her, BG, Brittany Griner, again, big dominant presence inside. And then they made some changes. And they got Kalia Copper, prolific scorer out of Chicago. They got Rebecca Allen in a trade from Connecticut Sun, big wing, big defender. They already had Sophie Cunningham on their team, and they also got a big time defender in Natasha Cloud coming from Washington Mystics. All right, out of that crew, you're kind of like, okay, that's the squad. Everyone else is like, we don't know who you are yet. These are kind of, I don't want to say no names. I feel like that's always disrespectful. They're definitely names. But there's a lot of names where we were like, we don't know who's going to make this training camp, who's going to make this roster. And they've come together and played really well, including opening night. I mean, really, probably one of the tightest challenges and kind of scariest challenges to the Aces so far this year. And they've been playing pretty solid. Chicago Sky, same thing. Angel Reese definitely at the front of that conversation, averaging almost a double double, 11 and a half points, 8.5 rebounds, like doing pretty well to start off. And then you've got some names that are kind of coming back into things. Of course, they had their point guard, Dana Evans, that was always there. But with and losing a Kylia Copper, they were kind of like, are we in a rebuild? They go and go get 2 big posts, Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. Boom. Camila Cardoso's out 4 to 6 weeks with an injury. And you also don't have Isabel Harrison, another big for them that's pretty dominant inside as well. And you're kind of like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Well, they're playing pretty well. That's what's happening. And it's been pretty fun. They're 1-on-1 in the season. and it's pretty cool to see them gel together. So those have been some of the surprises for me, is just seeing some of these teams that were counted to be down and out playing really, really, really well. Um, Caitlin Clark, I think everyone's settled down now, especially after the game. At the time that we're recording this, Caitlin Clark's and the Indiana Fever just gave the Connecticut Sun a scare, losing the game ultimately by 4 points, but leading at the end of the first, leading at halftime, I believe leading at the third too, but still staying close with the team that, for lack of better words, kicked their ass just a few days ago. I mean, we're
Yeah.
terrible. And you can see them gelling already. Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston already being the pair that everyone's thinking and had thought they would be. Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark playing together well in the backcourt. Caitlin Clark being able to take some attention off of Kelsey Mitchell and allowing her to get some space to move and maneuver around in the backcourt. So that's been fun. They've been learning with every single game against the New York Liberty, the Connecticut Sun, the Seattle Storm, some really big time teams. So that's been fun. But I'm very proud with the rookie class because there's been a lot of talk around them. And Caitlin Clark, say what you want. Yes, 21 turnovers over the first 3 games isn't great. We know. We know. She definitely got to get in the weight room. We know. But at the end of the day, 50 points in your first 3 games, that ain't bad. All right. And there's not many people who have done that. And you can just see her getting better. You're seeing her get more comfortable. And you're seeing her team, really understand how to play with her and around her too, and involve her more. And that's really exciting. Cameron Brink, defensive powerhouse out in LA. She's been completely, adapting to the game incredibly well defensively. She'll continue to make some strides offensively, but while she makes strides, her other rookie teammate, Rakia Jackson, 5 of 6 in 16 minutes the other night against the defending champions, Las Vegas Aces. That's a girl that literally came from Tennessee and was like, I'm ready for the WNBA tomorrow. Like, she should have been already playing. So it's just been a really fun rookie class already of them just being fearless and coming out and playing and living up to their expectations.
Last question for you, Zena. Can't let you go without talking about the Warriors. They were bounced by the Sacramento Kings. A lot of talk about the offseason in terms of what is going to happen with this squad. A dynasty in the modern NBA. What are your overall impressions about where this organization goes from here in terms of their future?
It's funny. I definitely believe that um, the core of the dynasty of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, I don't think they're going anywhere. I don't think Klay Thompson's going anywhere unless I see an astronomical number come across the board. And when I mean astronomical number, I mean like 35 million per year plus. Um, I don't think the Warriors are going to offer him something like that. But what I think the Warriors offer him that other teams can't is that history, is that pedigree, is that brotherhood. And it's interesting that when you look at what just happened in the NBA playoffs with the Minnesota Timberwolves bouncing the defending champions, the Denver Nuggets, out of the playoffs in the way that they did, Denver Nuggets going on a 3-game run, and then also going into that game 7, 20 points up at the half. That was their game to win. That was their game to have. And they ultimately fell apart in the second half, allowed the Timberwolves defense to just completely disrupt everything that they were doing, and they couldn't pull it out in the end. It just was proof of how hard it is to do what the Warriors did. And I feel as if that was like a very loud, it was so funny to see right after that game ended, right after the Nuggets were bounced, the Warriors were trending. And why? Because the history lesson of this is hard. To go back to back is difficult. And I believe, Mike Malone was talking about how spent his players were, how tired his players were, having given it all the way up to June and then having to come back. And their players are gassed. And you're sitting there like, they did it. The Warriors did it. And I think that, to me, is the reason and a thing that's going to just reinvigorate Clay and the Warriors to figure something out. Because what they did is historic, it's special, and it would just be really sour in my mind. Very sour to just disrupt all of that over money. and pride or ego.
Do you think they have a shot of staying together? Because in modern sports, I mean, usually the star players usually leave. I mean, just the history of the NBA, we've seen Patrick Ewing leave, Jordan play. The whole we can go down the line in terms
We
of
get on the line.
players not being, the whole thing of being loyal. So is it is it really impossible at this point for these three just to not stay at the same organization, or are they destined to kind of, fade apart?
Yeah, no, I don't. Anything's possible. Let's just be real, and anything's possible with the right paycheck. That's just what it comes down to. Um, what the Warriors have to do is figure out how to catch up with the league because the league caught up to them, right? They were the ones that were light years ahead with their shooting capability and also just like their ability to have a movement offense that people just couldn't catch up with. Everyone caught up. Number one way they did that, going to get super young, athletic, agile players. And the Warriors don't have enough of that right now. And their core is tied up in really talented, like really spent NBA bodies, right? What they did over the course of 8 years is unreal. And they need solid backup. Jonathan Kaminga, obviously a great one that they're not going to let go. Brandon Pajemski, shout out to him on the day that we're recording, just announced the NBA All Rookie team. They're not going to let him go. Trace Jackson Davis, a post player inside that can bounce with the best of them. I will never forget that monstrous dunk he had on Wemby this season. Great, but they need more. In order to win, they need more. And that's the part where you think about money, you think about the fact that the Warriors are above the second luxury tax apron and they're trying to get under it. That's where that concept of are they destined to stay together could be disrupted. And that sucks. That really sucks that could come down to dollars. Um, but I mean, heck, we're talking about the Warriors, but I'm thinking about the W again. You look at what the Aces are doing, and I don't think enough people know this about what the Aces did in order to even re-up for their two-time championship, the second one. They've got some people right now on their salary cap that are playing well below their market rate. Well below their market rate. When you think about what Jackie Young is making, what Kelsey Plum is making, the salary cuts that they took in order to keep their group together it's pissing a lot of GMs off. It's like we can't battle that. You've got someone that should be being paid $100,000 playing for 50, playing for 40, paying for 60 just so they can keep the team together. I want to see an equivalence, something equivalent happen with the Warriors. I think that's the only way that they're going to be destined to stay together. But it's not impossible that someone could come in and be, wave just the right amount of money. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
This has been a fantastic chat. Thank you very much for just spending some time with us. Can you please let our audience know where they can find you on social media and then anything else you're working on for the rest of the year as well?
For sure. My social media is the same across all handles. It's Zena Keita, ITSZENA KEITA on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Threads. TikTok and Threads I'm working on, folks, so don't come for me there. But my main podcast that I'm doing on women's basketball, if you want to learn more about the game and get some great analysis and breakdowns and behind the scenes insight, the Athletic Women's Basketball Podcast, wherever you get your podcast, is available. I got some other stuff. I'm going to be doing some rookie breakdowns on the WNBA app and socials. So follow the WNBA handles as well to see me there. And, some other things going on as the seasons roll around. It's just new things popping up all the time.
That's awesome. Thanks for spending some time with us. We'll have to have you on just to see how the rest of the season's going. A historic season for the WNBA. Thanks a lot, Zena.
No problem. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Matt. Can't wait to be back.